Zelos Podcast is sponsored by Kinetic IQ, where intelligence meets motion. Kinetic IQ brings a biomechanics lab into the palm of your hand, letting you measure movement anytime, anywhere, with just an iPad or an iPhone, and no wearables required. I've been using Kinetic IQ's markerless motion capture in my own practice, and whether you're screening athletes, analyzing posture and gait mechanics, optimizing performance, or guiding return to play, it helps practitioners like us save time, capture more objective data, and make instant actionable decisions. So to learn more about how Kinetic IQ is shaping the future of intelligent movement, visit them at kinetikiq.com. That's KINETIKIQ.com. You know, I can't tell you how thrilled I am to have Metabolic Elite be one of the sponsors of the Zelos Podcast. You know what makes Metabolic Elite different is their commitment to real results. I've seen a lot of supplements and performance enhancement things over the years, but they pair clinical experience with innovation, like Lipitab, their proprietary solid-state liposomal delivery system. It's a chewable format which enhances absorption, like nutrients like BPC 157 and synapses. They're delivered more efficiently in the body, supporting recovery, focus, cognitive health. Their formulas go beyond the basics, solving performance health challenges at the system level. Every product is tested for quality, it's backed by research, and trusted by athletes and clinicians alike. So learn more at metabolicelite.co. And you can get 10% off all of Metabolic Elite products by entering the coupon code ZELOS, Z-E-L-O-S. Well, you're tuned into the Zelos Podcast, the show that's all about the pros behind the pros in sports. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder, and you know, with the men's and women's USA hockey taking home both gold medals, I had to go back into the archives because one of my most favorite guests on the podcast is Cal Dietz. I've pulled him out of the archives a couple years ago, and I've got to do it again right now because not only is he at the University of Minnesota, strength conditioning is just phenom for the hockey team there, but yeah, he was with the women's gold team over in Italy just yesterday, last week, and so on. So I want to bring him back on, have a conversation, and don't get me wrong, we're probably going to have him on live or a new conversation, but for right now, let's just go back in time and listen to him. Before we get underway, remember the Fascia Performance and Rehab Summit that's occurring March 27th to the 28th in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. Tom Myers of Anatomy Trains, Bill Parisi, Michelle Dalcourt, Bobby Stroop, myself, and a whole bunch of others. 2 days in Jersey. Fascia Performance and Rehab Summit. You can go to performbetter.com and register there. Don't forget my website, rockysnyder.com. And yeah, I've said this over and over. You know, another thing I thought about with Cal is he's part of Metabolic Elite. He's on the advisory board. So it's not a conflict of interest here. It just shows you the kind of quality we have and the quality of sponsors we have. Okay, on to the conversation. How long have you been at the University of Minnesota?
I've been here roughly probably 20, just over 20 years full time. I was a GA and then I came back and or I left, did some other coaching other places and then came back here. They hired me. I was probably underqualified at the time, but not sure the job was a great position at the time, but that's the thing. I didn't know if I'd stay here, but ultimately I made it into what I wanted, right? Like
what a blessing.
Right. Well, people pulled out of the position once they found out there was like 4 interviewers and they like literally pulled out of the position because they're like, man, this sounds like a nightmare. You know what I mean? From a number of reasons. And when I took the reason they were hiring me, those people were way more qualified probably, but they were hiring me because there was a series of GAs and it was a tough situation. You were overworked, right? Underpaid, obviously. And I think a lot of people, all the GAs over a number of years that could have been applied for this job, the full time, would complain. I think I was the only one. They said one of the coaches was like, "Well, you're the only one that didn't complain over the last number of years." So I got hired by default because I didn't complain, and I was eating shit sandwiches, right? And didn't say a word, just like yeah. So it was what it was.
Yeah, well, it's kind of cool because I mean, if we're talking 20 plus years ago, even then we're kind of at that infancy stage when it comes to strength conditioning, right? It wasn't until, well, I know 85 or so was when the CSCS certification came into play and strength conditioning was starting to kind of get into its growth pains. So you came in at a really decent time where there was probably still a lot of huge room for improvement, or however you want to say it, making mistakes and just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. So you really have created the position yourself, I imagine.
Yeah, right. Like, and as I said, overseeing 12 teams with one assistant back then. And at times I had more assistants, but ultimately now I have one assistant with 50 hockey players. But the details that go in now, right? And I told you I probably wrote about 25 to 27 programs a month for the whole year for all those athletes and whatever category they placed in. And last summer I have basically 6, because I added a lot to my training and to make it so much more athletic, because I had a revelation about some things. Well, when I was training my son over COVID, I had a lot of revelations over COVID, right? And we can get into the performance cycling later. What I saw, which I think is a game changer, it's called performance cycling. Well, I'll bring that up later. But I guess my point is that all the things that I've been exposed to and different views of elite swimmers, hockey players, track and field has kind of helped me like make my programs to what they are today and my thinking, right? So, and with coaches willing to let me make mistakes early too, because nobody really knew a lot of stuff back then, Right. My swim coach, one time I remember I changed an exercise and it made him so sore, not because it was low, just because it was a different stretch probably, right? And then they swam really bad. And he called me, he's like, hey, they swam really bad. And I was like, oh, shit, coach, sorry. And it wasn't a big meet. So he was like, all right. He's like, no worry. I just called him a bunch of names, told them they were soft and to figure it out. Right. So, I mean, that's the support you had back then, but I didn't make that mistake again. I didn't, but that coach, and he was it was Dennis Dale. He was I think we won probably 5 or 7 Big Ten titles together. Amazing coach, right? Like he was awesome. So he called him soft and all this and but that was the culture and the mentality. And they weren't, he just was like, you got to get over, but it was really a good lesson for him, right? Hey, no matter what comes, you got to go, right? You got
sure.
Yeah. And I think the little bit of softness in the society now and babying people and being like, extra cautious about how people, feel and you should be, but yet there's times when you set a plan and you're moving ahead and it's time for competition that you can't, like, this has to happen now, people, regardless of what cards were dealt. You know what I mean? And hopefully you have good leaders in your organization, not only the coaches, but the student athletes too, but anyway, yeah, I've been here a while and I mean, didn't know I'd stay this long, but I feel like I can't leave at least for another few years if I ever want to, because I got too much work to do. Right.
Yeah. Well, you're in a prestigious institution when it comes to hockey too. I mean, I just think about when I was a kid and Miracle on Ice, 1980, Lake Placid Olympics, and the U.S. shocked the world and the men's hockey team. And half of the players either came from where I grew up in Boston,
right?
And Mike Ruzioni and all the rest of them. And but the other half came from freaking Minnesota, University of Minnesota. So that's a very prestigious place when it comes to hockey. How did you start to filter down into just the men's and women's hockey? And by the way, congratulations with the Olympics. And
well, thank you. Yeah, and really, honestly, when I started, the deal. When we were young, like we'd write the programs, we'd go in, work the kids out, have a good time. When I say good time, it wasn't good for them sometimes because it was hard, obviously, right? And I run a high volume program, and it's hard training. But the kids got better, and I'm fortunate to I'm at 37 Big Ten championships, or league championships here. So I've just been fortunate to be a part of it. Yeah, I think I got my rings back there somewhere. Like I got like 40 some of them with everything, but I just been like, and then as the field evolved I just realized I couldn't keep servicing the teams that I had unless I had full-time staff of like 6 or 8. So then I just kept getting rid of teams and then we got more strength coaches. So, and then now it's just down to 2, but I mean, I have 50 kids in the summer. I got probably 20 pros, and last year was like 10 Olympians. So we had 80 people running through the weight room, and I had 6 main programs that I developed over like COVID with new variables. And those, with all the variables I have wrote down and didn't get to implement, I just wanted to make sure the base 6 work. And then what'll happen, like, let's say you're in program 5, which might be a highly speed-based program. Now I'll be able to split that up into, hey, certain qualities when we test you, you'll need, whether it's a lateral speed or type 2 fiber training or work capacity in the type 2 fiber training. That program 5 will be able to split into 5 or 6 different variables. You know what I mean?
Nice.
So I think I'll have roughly at the end of the summer, probably, I say 30, but it might be 40, and it's all based on testing. So what I'll do is I'll test my athletes in a 10 and 20 yard dash. And I have a free tool out there for coaches, and it's called like Performance Made Simple, or check my website. It's a 10-20 tool. And Rock, what I had was 20. I had it was like 17 years of testing. And in the beginning, I test a lot of things. I test more things now, but it was just different. Like I had power clean. I don't do a lot of power cleans anymore with my athletes in regards to hockey, but I had power cleans, vertical jumps, flying 10s and 20 yard dashes. We did all this testing, and I had all these numbers, and I looked at all these force velocity profile things from people, but I'm like, well, if this is on a force plate, and I checked 20 years ago when I started digging into force plates, I couldn't predict what the athlete needed off a force plate because it's a single jump. And as you said, with running and gait, I analyzed the 10 and 20 yard dashes and a number of other things. And I realized, hey, this kid, his back squat showed he needed to get stronger, and his 10-20 showed this. So I ran all these thousands of numbers and started looking at things, and I came up with formulas that I could extract out of the 10 and 20 yard dash that told me whether they need strength, speed, or power.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
Right. And people say, well, this guy has it on the force plate. I'm like, but I'm telling you, I can get his force plate readings will say he needs strength, but this athlete needs speed to get better. That's where his weak link is. You see what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
I just, and I hate force plate, companies probably doesn't want me to hear you say this, but 20 years ago, I couldn't figure out, and there was no way. And I'm still 100% positive on this. You're analyzing one jump.
Yeah.
Right? One jump, one moment in time when a 20 yard dash analyzes a large spectrum of hip extension patterns. Right. So, and then I have all these numbers, and I was able to extrapolate a bunch of formulas, and I have a lot more that I'll share, but eventually, but you're just like, so then what I do is I evaluate somebody every 2 weeks. So they run a program, or they run a 10-20 and a few other things. And it can tell me even now if they need, so like the 5 yard dash, if your 5 yard dash in that 10 and 20 slow, but your 10-20 times good, I know that you need isometric strength to get out of the blocks faster. It's pretty simple.
Right on.
So I assess everybody's weakest link, and then you get shoved into the program for 2 weeks so that program can change it. And then after 2 weeks, we retest you. And most likely you got a different number by now because we have focused generally on that one point. And that 1 point's better. Your 10 and 20 is better, but now you got a new weak link, and it could be speed. It could be power. So I reassess, and then you'll get prescribed this summer, probably one of the 30 to 40 programs from that.
Well, I can see this being like one of those logical paths that look like tree roots or branches down. If this, then you have this option.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And then if this, and then so you have those 5 or 6 programs that can create multiple variants based on the continued assessment that you have. If they score this, then it's got to be this. And if that's there, then we're going to do these kind of movements. And if the result is this, then that takes them over into here. And so pretty soon you are filtering down to the essence of what each athlete needs. And what are the surprises for you? Like as you're doing this, there must be some common themes. Like for Yeah, I'll ask that question.
Well, here was the major surprise for anybody listening that wants to try this, right? So in that 10-20 tool, what I did is I didn't really make adjustments. And what we did, well, I shouldn't say that. We had tested for a whole summer, and some friends of mine also tested for the whole summer. And we just kind of tracked what happened to them and based upon the results of that 10-20. And coach, the typical periodization model, so over I think it was like maybe over, well, my athletes and another coach was over 100, it might have been 200 total. But when you track it, coach, the typical periodization model, do you know how many athletes followed? So I test every 2 weeks, change your program accordingly. Only 30% of the people followed the typical periodization model. So when
you mean the athletes were compliant or the model itself?
When I test them, it gave them the program. So after I tested them, I watched the whole summer and I said, well, look how this program went for this kid. Right? So coach,
they bypassed the hypertrophy phase and went right to basic strength.
Well, some did, but others didn't. But others went to the hypertrophy, but only 30% started in basically the hypertrophy phase at the beginning and then would taper, just like the NSCA. And I'm not saying that model's wrong, because obviously 30% of the athletes needed that model.
Right. Yeah.
The other, coach, another 30%, guess what? If you flip that model, that's what they did over the course of the summer to get better. Because they were already like, basically had the strength and the size, or what the strength basically. So then we went towards speed. And then as they got faster, then it said they needed more strength at the end of so it was a completely reverse of the model. And then 40% were all over the place. So here was the nightmare that I had to live for when I realized that. For 15, 16 years, I had been not fully giving them the optimal program.
Cookie cutter.
Because 40%, and I thought it was a pretty good cookie cutter, but right, I just followed kind of a plan usually. But coach, 60% of my athletes, I didn't serve them optimally. Now look, they all got better.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I was like,
had been more fun.
Yes, and
right?
so that's what keeps me up at night. Right? That's what keeps me up at night. It's not serving them. Right. And then that was the big one. And then now, coach, if anyone's listening to this and starts digging into that and start using it, it's a fairly simple free based app. It's not an app, but it probably will be. But ultimately, coach, you know that, hey, this kid, hey, I just did this 2 weeks before his training camp, and he got a strength reading. But you don't want to do strength you want to do more power and speed. It's just a guideline to make you aware. You know what I mean? Like, use this as the art of coaching is you making those decisions. You may have all the things and somebody says, hey, you got to do this. But I got an athlete walking into a camp. He has to be fast. The tool is going to tell me he needs strength, but yeah, I know he needs this for camp. Stay with what you know as a coach. Like, the art of coaching, but don't let your ego get involved, right? Where you say, oh, I want to do this. Like, what's the athlete need, not what the coach's ego needs too. I think a lot of young people want to get right. And
sure,
the hard part is, coach, like, there's been a number of times in my coaching career, and I went, holy crap, everything I might know might be wrong, right? And it's like, if you can accept that, you need to do that, right? Because you got to understand, like, there's so much that I don't know. You know what I mean? There's so much still.
Well, yeah, the more we learn, the less we know. I think that goes without saying, right?
Well,
we have doing this for decades now, so really, we're more idiots than we were when we began.
Coach, right? Like, the dynamics, the system is so dynamic, the organism that we deal with, the human body. There's no answers that are definitive, rarely, because every system that adapts to stress has to adapt to this stressor, and then all the other systems change, but no one will change the same. Even if you have identical twins, right? What if one twin's stressed when he's doing this program and one's really relaxed the whole time and doesn't have, there's a whole different response to everything. So you see what I mean? Like, that's the art of this whole thing, but that's what keeps us interested, right?
Well, yeah. And the fact that you have this kind of logical approach is going to, and you allow yourself to break away from the traditional periodization model, allows more individualized programming to occur. So rather than just taking, okay, all the team is going to go through 4 to 6 weeks of this volume and rep count and so on, right? So with that too, you brought up something like the more we learn, right? And there's certain things that influence our path. And for me, it was learning that the whole conventional way of lifting, bodybuilding, powerlifting, Olympic lifting was actually, for the majority of my clients, more detrimental in long-term effects than what I was hoping for. So we were starting to see, like you said, stressors in the body, how different areas negotiate with one another. And then you put in these type of lifts and they're going to get through them any way they can. It may not be the most efficient way, and it could bring about pain, suffering somewhere down the road, not necessarily short-term, but somewhere if they kept on doing it. So I started getting into posture. And then that brought me to biomechanics, which now brought me to motor neurology and getting deep into what the brain is doing and how the brain interprets what the body's doing, how it sends signals and so on. So what were your influential elements in this path that has led you to where you are right now?
Well, you mentioned too, Coach, like I'm the one unique tool I have, I think, is that I'm able to kind of erase my mind from everything I've learned and look at something new by itself, right? And not try to be so like a lot of coaches say, well, yeah, but that doesn't make sense with this thing or this scientific proven. I'm like, yeah, but like there's something here. Look at that. You know what I mean? So I'm able to do that. The nervous system, obviously, I knew was a secret. And obviously the brain tied to that. So when I say that, the nervous system controls all, right? So then I got into heart rate variability, and I mean, I'm probably above 15,000 tests, maybe for sure, maybe 20 of heart rate variability. So, but then, Coach, I mean, I've had athletes take supplements, do heart rate variability tests, see if they work. I have, I've done so many experiments. I've done experiments on myself with even any drugs I was prescribed, right? Like, how's this creating my heart, changing my heartbeat? How's this doing this, right? Some supplements with heart rate variability, I'd say, okay, this works really well for this athlete. And others, it had a negative effect. So it's kind of individualized too. You know what I mean? So this whole thing, so studying heart rate variability, and then obviously when you tackle the brain, it's terrifying because you really don't know what you don't know then. You know what I mean? And the areas of the brain, Coach, actually, so then the one thing to train the brain and really just activate it when I say that, or balance it out, as you know, with right and left hemisphericities. Like Coach, I have a drill people need to look at. It's on YouTube. It's free. I called it the GOAT drill. And it was derived by Dr. Sandberg out of like Buffalo, New York. She did behavioral therapy in kids. And what she had a drill that was called Infinity Walk. You may have heard of it. And basically you have a kid, let's say he's standing there looking towards his left, whether it's a TV or a spot on the wall, and they have two objects to walk around, and they walk around in a figure eight so that they never leave the vision as they're walking around these two objects in a figure eight pattern, leave that vision of that object on the wall. So you're shifting from the left side, looking to the left side, and then you're walking in gait and you walk around to the right side. And you switch back and forth from the right and left brain, obviously from your vision and things going on. And it was crazy. They have entire clinics based upon these infinity walks, so people can look them up, of kids with ADD and just these behavioral problems, how they improved. I actually met people that worked in those clinics and just focus and everything. So then what I was like, well, this is pretty awesome. And I'm thinking I have some kids with ADD. Well, then what I did was I took a combination of like a guy named Dan Fichter, a friend of mine, Chris Korfus, a great world-class speed coach out of Chicago. They did all these different various running things. And then I was like, okay, so this GOAT drill is a figure eight. So what I did was I had my athletes run when they did it. So, and they would look at an object on the wall, and I'll just be brief because you look up GOAT performance drill, people can see my 25 minutes of videos. I'm putting the third one out, the final one. And Coach, my athletes are running while they're doing that. They have a tennis ball in their hand and they're moving it around their waist while they're running. Okay. While they're watching the object on the wall doing a figure eight. Then they are doing math. So the best way to do the math is my interns would yell out numbers and they'd subtract 3, but I found it so I don't have to have all the people there. They will just start at a number I give them and add 3. and it becomes extremely hard. So there's cognitive, they're using their hands and feet, running around in a circle, which is great for the ankle stability, everything, right? And then I have little, like sometimes I have little cut up floor mats on the floor. So their brain knows now there's something that it could step on. Their brain cautiously makes the foot land in the right position. Because sometimes these athletes run on their heels. But when you throw those mats down there, it changes it. They run the way they're supposed to and not land on their heels.
Totally digging that.
Right? Because there's the fear now. And they're doing math. And then what we even do, you can even that still spot on the wall, make it so it's a moving object while they're running, doing math, hands around the waist, running in circles. Coach, and I'm telling you, what it does is it create, and then what I'll do is I'll put in the circles. I have all these athletes standing around. I put them in the circle, and they're blocking the vision and frustrating the person that's doing the drill, trying to find the object that's moving. While think about that with football, hockey, all these things. Coach, when that frustration happens, it releases neurotransmitters, dopamine, acetylcholine, and epinephrine, because you're frustrated, and it creates a state of learning a new skills. And I'm telling you, Coach, I've had coaches email said, Cal, I've never seen anything change athletes like this drill. So how I do it, at the beginning of so at the beginning of my workout, the way my workout's structured, we do RPR, quick warm up. And I'm not a big warm up guy, I'll be honest with you, because whatever we can get. but then we do this go drill, and it turns the brain on. And then in the beginning of all of my workouts, I do a short sprint, whether it's a 20-yard dash, whether it's a pro agility, whatever. Or a sled push that day. It doesn't matter, but I do 6 sprints, because after everything I've ever measured, then after 5 or 6, they start to slow down. So then what do? We go to the gym. But I'll do a short sprint. Then we come over, and for when they're resting, they're doing this goat drill. And then what happens is we do a sprint. We go back and forth. I do the goat drill 5 or 6 times, or the sprint both 5 or 6 times. That's what we do for our pre-lift. And like, I do my speed I do some speed every day. So if they would train 5 days a week, they basically do 30 sprints and it might be a pro agility. That's it. 6 reps. It might be a 20-yard dash, right? Or it might be a flying 10, whatever you choose. And then we go lift. But the point is, Coach, I am telling you that goat drill creates a state of learning that I have never seen my kids, even when I introduce new drills, they pick them up better. And my best athletes do this. And it is scary. I'm just telling you, people need to look at that and just apply it into their program. And I had one buddy that did it with his 9-year-old daughter. She was both parents athletic, uncoordinated, couldn't figure out. And he called me and he's like, yeah, she's uncoordinated. I'm not sure if it's ever going to click. Well, he started doing this, like the goat drill, but he did it when she was watching TV, just watching the TV with subtitles. So she was reading. That's what he said. You got to do this 20 minutes, 3 times a week. And all of a sudden people were like, how'd she get so much more athletic? Because she was kind of awkward, but she had grown really fast, right? And I'm like, buddy, I'm telling you, this is, and now I know various groups have tried it in the special operations community. So you think about it, they run into a room and they're doing CQB, close quarters combat. This whole thing, they step over things to try to clear this drill. So in the one thing, Coach, you've dealt with concussions and people like that, and obviously helped them. Any of my athletes that had concussions in the last year got sick when they first started doing this drill and running. It was it's that much of a brain drill.
Yeah. Intense.
So then all we did was we had them walk after that. And then actually in 2 workouts, and they started running again.
Right on. So they
had no
definitely, they adjusted their nervous system, their brain.
Something happened, Coach. You probably can't answer the whole thing. Like nobody can, but it's really a brain balancing drill on steroids that's working every area. I ran it by a functional neurologist. He's like, yeah, Cal, this is crazy.
I mean, there's something called the RAPS test, which is rapid alternating pronation supination, and generally just having somebody assess which side of their cerebellum is more inhibited, which one's more awkward, slower, or less coordinated, because the cerebellum is all about accuracy, balance, coordination. And one of the ways of stimulating it is making figure eights, or the technical term, lemniscation, and we're just going to have the hand or the foot or the finger on the side that is inhibited, and then you reassess them, and it's like
it's
night
better.
and day.
Yeah, I know.
Boom,
right?
boom, boom. So to be doing that figure 8 action while having the eyes either fixed on an object or having to track a moving object, now you've just taken it up so many notches. You've dialed it up to 11. It's just, I love it. And then hand-eye coordination.
Yeah, moving a ball around your hands and everything.
Unbelievable.
Coach. Yeah, it's so basically I put that drill on steroids. Like the Sandak was her name. It's in my videos. I give her full credit, right? But like, it's just like, I'm telling you, Coach, things with running. And one of the things I don't do is like, this is how you and I like gait. When my athletes run, I don't coach running because, so for example, for everybody, is that if I have an athlete that's sticking their right arm out when they run, I could tell them to put it in. But that right arm being out tells me there's a problem, right? So then I have found, and here's where I've tracked it through, either their lat's off, and their lat can be off because then the lat crosses over the opposite QL, which then ties into the glute medius on the opposite side, which then actually 90% of the time goes down to the foot. If the foot's unstable when they strike the ground, the brain goes, I'm going to try to stabilize it to hip, and I can't. Then the brain instantly moves the arm out. So when that arm goes out, it tells me that this could be some of the problem. So then, because I had a coach visit with some elite track kids, and they were running out of the track, and he's like, well, this guy always has to keep his arm. I got to coach him up. I'm like, but here's the deal. If he's running down the track going, I got to run as fast as I can and hold my arms in, that's not going to work, right? No, it doesn't work. So this is why, I mean, when people come to see me, like I don't coach world-class sprinters. I never did in running, but I did in the weight room. But I'm not going to coach them through a problem. I want to fix the problem. So then I fix the stability of the foot over some time or with RPR. And really to fix that stability of the foot, there's an arch reset right at the top of the calf on the inside. And you just rub the edge of the top of that calf by your knee, and it'll turn that arch on so the foot doesn't collapse, which then causes the glute med to shut down or not work correctly, because I think then the brain's recruiting the glutes to stabilize the hip. And then eventually through enough repetitions, the lat seems to shut off and not work correctly, which helps hold that arm in. You see what I mean? So I do. So that whole sling system, right? That whole sling system is something in that chain eventually is off. So running at the beginning of summer, or especially at the beginning of the year, you walk in May when my athletes have went through their base phase and their hockey, remember, so they're in boots, they're running, it looks atrocious. As anybody's running most likely should at the beginning of they've been off 3 weeks, they did the base phase, and it's like now we start running, you're like, oh, it looks ugly. Yeah, but over time, the problems get fixed. And that's how I knew my system and the methods that we were doing or the exercises were correct, because I would intervene with an exercise where I thought it was a problem, and then the problem of running got better. And by the end of summer, they look really good, even though they've started skating again. It's like, so it's kind of like one of my buddies said, that's like a Jedi moment where you don't coach running because you got to fix the problems, right? So hopefully I don't have to fix their running, because the system eventually or soon enough will fix it. Does that make sense?
Totally does. You know, I love it. Whether it's an arm that's winging outward, or a hip that's pelvis that's doing a little bit more rotation than it should, or hiking a little bit more on one, or the knees are going valgus, or the heels swinging around. These are all the brain's solutions. They're not the problem, right? It's the solution to whatever's going on within the body. And it's trying to negotiate, okay, if we need to go from point A to point B, and we're going to try and do it in the most efficient way with everything that's going on, here's my best solution. So it's great. I'm really glad you say that it is not the problem. So it could be something that was predicated 5-10 years prior with an inversion sprain, or they tweaked their lower back. And now that whole negotiated pattern has normalized into this kind of cyclical compensatory action. And it's been working. So you don't want to just say, hey, bring that arm in or straighten out that foot. When I hear people saying, oh, well, my PT or my coach told me that I have to turn my toes in. I'm like, that is not the solution. There's a reason why those feet are turned out. Let's see if we can't find it.
Right.
And for me, it's like when those are turned out, that in the most simplest terms is that the body is trying to create rotation. It's trying to create more transverse plane action. So where up the chain is it lacking? So I'm just going to go up and see where is there a lack of rotation.
Right.
Or if I see a head that's forward, oh, okay, well, it's trying to give me more movement, more mass forward. What's going back or what's not going forward? If we start to think in those terms, then we start to kind of home in on what the origin is.
The crazy thing is, Coach, like when I get like a lot of these changes in the body, I used to think, oh, there's a weakness, but like people don't. No. It's not always a weakness. What it is the brain's protecting itself. Yes. You see what I mean?
Totally. It's
the brain's
not weakness.
Protecting itself.
Let's get away from strong and weak or inhibited and facilitated. The reason why
survival.
It's inhibited, there's exactly that. The brain is going, I need this to shut down. And what do? We throw some mini bands around somebody's ankles and let their ass burn. And then they walk around and say, oh, that feels great. It hasn't solved the problem.
Coach, you ready for this one? Just to bring it up to this point. So I'll test the glute med, and I did a video on it, and I got a bunch of hate emails from all over the world, like one Italian PT. And I showed people, I said, look what happens here. I have an athlete, glute med's not working. They do all these glute med exercises, and guess what? And then we retest. It's been 100%. It got worse.
Yeah.
I just had
all those glute med exercises that you can think of, take it from a neutral length of muscle and concentrically contract it, and then it eccentrically goes back to neutral. But how do we turn on a muscle? It's that other end of the spectrum that no one is actually loading into the glute in eccentric manner for the stretch shortening reflex to kick in so it can actually turn on. So if we want to really load the glute, it's not a sidestepping action.
No.
It's actually more pronation mechanics and loading into the glute with an anteriorly tilted pelvis and one that's hiking on one side, or you know what I'm saying? It's just we got to look at actually how do we turn on the body, which brings me to this, your RPR.
Yeah.
You just mentioned it. I'd love to talk about that because this is leading right into it. I mean, we could go down the rabbit hole of biomechanics and gait for forever. I'd be happy to go with you, but I want to hear all about RPR.
Yeah, well, the thing about RPR, Coach, is what I realized and what I wanted it to be for coaches is that, you know, an athlete walks in and let's say I used this analogy before, but walks into your gym and you have 100 athletes, you're squatting and you have 2 with knee pain, and then the trainers go and in the strength coach setting where, whoa, you're probably squatting them wrong or you're doing too much. I'm like, wait a minute, I got 98 other athletes over here doing the same program or same squat movement, and they don't have knee pain. So, but the problem is the strength coaches or the personal trainers, according to the PTs, will blame us, right? Because, right, when it's not our fault. Every time what RPR has given me the ability to understand that some of that person's compensation and why they have knee pain. So I don't get blamed for something that they've either hurt before or there's a compensation pattern, right? But yet a trainer, especially the young guys, will get blamed for. You know what I mean? And you're like, that was the thing. And really what it is a series of reflexes that change the patterns and reset the body so that the patterns, at least for a little while, especially during the workout, can get better. Now, one RPR session is effective, but we found that if people just do it to themselves every day, and it's a system of self-care, it just kind of clears things up to some level, and then sound training and sound movements help re-ingrain the whole pattern, right? Well, and like I use the glute analogy. Let's say you did all those exercises in the weight room and you're doing all the right exercises, and coach, people, and they did everything correctly. The glute maybe got a little bit better in that session, but coach, if they go out and they walk with their hamstring and not their glute first and do 10,000 steps, they've ruined everything that you just did. So like one of the things I'll do is I'll try to teach my athletes to walk correctly and have that big toe grab the ground, the Babinski reflex, right? And then drive that hip forward. And what happens is like now they've used the right hip pattern when they walk. the 100 exercises I did in here don't really matter, because if they're walking correctly and they get 10,000, that's a better thing. That's a better training than I can do in the weight room for a few minutes before a lift or something, right? You see what I'm saying?
Truly.
Like it's the crazy. So what RPR is those series of reflexes. And I should have an app coming out in the next month and a half where we basically give it to people. I mean, we have, thousands of certified coaches and practitioners, even doctors and people. And we want to make sure that they can show their people, not just a poster, but hey, you here's how you do it. Here's an app, click it. It'll take you through it every day really quick if you want. So
yeah, and for the listening audience, RPR, Reflexive Performance Reset, is what we're talking about. And you go to Cal's website and check it out. So sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah. And it's like, and we're hoping to have that soon. And really, our number one objective is, hey, if you're in pain, like there's some magical things that obviously happen, especially even with some elite athletes, where one of my 3-time Olympians did this bike workout and her heart rate was roughly around 160 at this bike workout in a certain set of watts. And she'd do it 2 or 3 times a week because she liked it for conditioning. After the first day of RPR, her heartbeat was at 140 with the same watts during the same duration. So she was 20 beats lower because her diaphragm, she reset it herself. And she kicked into the right breathing pattern because we opened up all the muscles. And then what happens, Coach, was that there's a lot of tonus in her musculature. So then each of those muscles didn't have to work as hard because it takes the tonus out of them and they're more relaxed. So the blood flow increased dramatically. So her heart didn't have to work as hard to produce the same watts in the same workout. And the heartbeat was 20 beats lower.
Love it.
So that's just one example. And I have many examples of that, of the benefits, and really it's just a quick reset. And then people go and do the workout they're supposed to, or whatever they're prescribed. And they move a little bit better, like elite athletes, world-class athletes. I mean, I was at the World Championships and we were all outside warming up. And I think out of the 8-9 teams were there, at least 5-6 of them were doing RPR, right? I don't even know if they knew that I was the guy that brought it to fruition, but people were doing it. So, in the athletic population, it's grown pretty fast. So.
And how did you come about this? I mean, what was the impetus or?
Yeah, well, Douglas Heel was a physical therapist that kind of put it all together, right? At least the first part of it. And it's a hands-on course, and Douglas is part of RPR. And and when we just needed to make it more usable because it was a really intense course and the process. And what we did was we kind of boiled it down to, hey, this, and people understand this better, just refine the teaching method, and we created RPR, and then get it to the masses is what our objective was. So Douglas's, the way he taught it is be activated, and it was more for like a hardcore practitioner, because a lot of people can't put their hands on people, right? They're not qualified. But sure, this, any coach can take the course and they teach you to do it to yourself. So then and now we have another level of RPR, which is a pretty terrifying. You could call it level 3, but it's what Chris has put together, and we've worked on it together to some things that we came across. It's pretty terrifying in regards to how crazy the fixes are, and just clearing people's patterns and things that I found on an MRI. Well, they checked an MRI on one of my athletes and pulled her hamstring 7 years ago, and she was the first one. And I just started working with her, and she was a professional, but ultimately then I was like, hey, there's a spot here. And then I told the trainer, hey, there's something here. And they're like, well, yeah, an MRI showed up an old injury. You know what I mean? But I was able to spot that with that. So, and then I didn't want to say I could clear the scar tissue or the damage, but the brain had changed itself because of that issue. And then what I was able to do was clear it, and the brain reset itself. So then it didn't test bad at that spot anymore with one of our isolation tests on that. So yeah, and I'm definitely going to let you get you the courses. You can take a look at that and you can see some of the benefits. But and really, Coach, I mean, I got a high school coach who takes the course and starts it with 700 athletes the next day. Right, the next day, and his high school.
Talk about implementing. That's fantastic.
Well, yeah, right. Like when I first learned to be activated, I worked on every athlete, and you're like, oh man, this is going to kill me eventually, right? But when they started working on themselves, and we refined the techniques of coaching that, and it's something like you could get. And we have an individual course for somebody who doesn't want to take the 6-hour level 1. of why it works. But ultimately, then we have a course for, hey, I got 40 minutes. I want to learn this really quick. And then the app will be out soon, which people will be able to download. But, ultimately, the biggest thing was that, hey, young strength coaches, for me, this will help clear some things so that you don't get blamed for a lot of the stuff that's not your fault. You know what I mean? That's not your fault, because they're not in this business 20 years where they say, well, this was actually, I think, the knee problem. Right. But the trainer, and then the trainers and the PTs will blame somebody. Right. Everyone wants to blame somebody when, hey, it was, and they think, and young strength coaches have to realize it's not the training always that's hurting people. Right. Because like some of my athletes, they're so freaky, you could do bad training with them and they're not going to get hurt, and they're just animals. They're going to be savages, right?
Sure.
Yeah, like they're going to get by, right? But ultimately, you want to do the right thing and get as close as we can with our knowledge that we have right now.
Yeah. Can we reduce the non-contact injuries? Can we just reduce the likelihood? We may not reduce the chance, because there's always going to be a chance, but can we just reduce the percentage of the athletes, the people that we're training, to just be able to live more of a pain-free existence and compete at that level too?
Yeah. Right. I mean, that was the goal with our PR. It's pretty simple. Like somebody can do it in about 2 to 3 minutes. I integrate it where they'll do a dynamic warm up. And if they're standing in a line at the end, as soon as they're done, they're not standing. They'll do the first reset, and then they do another dynamic movement. We do another one, right? Just get it in before the workout. And the ability to handle stress. Like we've had some pretty monumental things in regards to like just lower heartbeats, people doing the same workout, not stress, pain going away. But really, we're just resetting your body a little bit so the body can start to function like it's supposed to. And that's the tool. And it's really easy to implement. You literally don't have to do a whole lot or put your hands on a coach. Just schedule it in there and let's go. And really, you don't. And even if you don't get to it till you start your workout, and in between sets, maybe you do the spots while you're resting. That's fine too. It's doing it every day or every other day or whenever you work out, at least that builds up over time, and they get a lot. Like you could do a RPR if you did hands on with somebody, and you get some great results. But coach, and then maybe in a month they need it again, maybe not. But the point is, if they just do it every day, it's going to accumulate on them. You see what I mean? So
fantastic.
That was the big thing. So, and we have a vision reset, and some of the stuff that people have blind spots and things like that have gone away. It's pretty terrifying, and they can literally do it to themselves, right? Like, and how vision has changed people's entire career. Well, they only wanted to be a right-sided defenseman because they didn't they wanted to be on the right side because then, hey, the right vision wasn't very good, and we cleared that, and now they could go both sides. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, right. And just some things like that. So
early on in our conversation here, you mentioned some epiphanies that you have had, especially during COVID. Were there any other ones?
Yeah.
What's come up?
Well, the one that kicked it off, I was training my son. He was just 14 back then. And he was doing online school, which was the first part, right, of COVID. And you're like, they weren't prepared. So it was what it was, right? And I mean, the teachers were there, but so we didn't have much going on. And so we were training 3 times a day, basically 6 days a week, and we couldn't do a lot. And then one day I did one of the methods I got from Giles Cometti, who was a French researcher, was the French contrast method. I call it French contrast. And if people want to look it up, there's also Warner Gunther was the world record shot putter. He shows a 290-pound man jumping through hurdles and doing squats. And yeah, right. Like it's on the internet. There's 100,000 plus views on that one. And it's in my first book, French Contrast. And I didn't invent it, but I just use it frequently. And I had him do a set of squats and then a hurdle hops, and then like a loaded squat jump. But I had him warm up. I had him sprint. I videoed the sprint. And then I had him do a French contrast. And then I had him, after the 3 sets of that or 4, I had him run again. And coach, what happened was he was bouncing up and down too much when he ran. So I had created just now with something I've been using, again, mistakes I've made for 20 years, right? For 20 years, 18 maybe, caused a bad pattern in my son.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, oh no. And I've created world champions with those programs. So I'm not saying they were all bad, right? But like,
yeah.
I had to come to the consensus that there was a problem. And I was fine with it because I'm the first person to tell you if I'm doing something wrong, I'll throw it out and start over with something new, right? And And then I was like, oh no. So then we did a combination of glute exercises and glute hamstring. I did some prime times. I love prime times, like the Deion Sanders run when he goes into the touchdown, like he's scoring a touchdown with the ball in the air. He'll run where he's a straight-legged, like it's a straight-legged sprint. So he's driving with his glute, right? So I do glute ham, reverse hyper, and a prime time run. And then I had him after that set. I'm like, well, let's see what, if anything's different. I videoed it and the bounce went away. So the compensation pattern went away. So I played around. Was it the exercises? Nope. It was just the contrast at the beginning was a quad dominant contrast. So then what I did was I took the glute ham reverse hyper and put it in the contrast. And on my YouTube page, it's free. I talk about, it's called performance cycling. And if you want to look it up, you can see the whole deal. I even have video of him undulating on a different drill, but that I caused. But the point is you do like a squat, maybe a hurdle hop, then you do like a reverse hyper, a glute ham, or some type of glute exercise. I pair that with a prime time run after the glute exercise. And coach, what it does is it offsets any of the adaptation. And he's a pretty good athlete. His mom was an Olympic champion and he's always been a good athlete and he adapts really quickly. So in him, I was able to catch that quick adaptation of driving home a bad pattern. Well, then what happened was the glute, when I added the glute and then had him run, and I called it performance cycling, he didn't undulate. So then the pattern is more correct, right? Uh-huh. So we're not driving home a quad dominant, especially a quad dominant athlete that does that. He's really adapting. And so that was during COVID. And I saw it when I came back to my gym to watch this stuff happen. I was like, all right, I pulled RPR for the first 10 weeks because RPR can actually fix that pretty quickly if they do it in their warm up and hold it off. But then what happened was I checked them all and I found the quad dominant kids and we started doing this performance cycling. And after about 2 to 3 weeks, it switched them out of that quad dominant and that undulation.
Nice.
Yeah. So I just wanted to confirm that by itself would fix it in the programming. And then obviously after about 10 weeks, I added RPR back in just because I know what it does. And I didn't want that to influence my results. So like that was one example of an epiphany I had. And coach, my programs now are for the lower body are performance cycled. So I'll do like when I do my back squat, maybe a hurdle hop, then I throw in a reverse hyper, which I like. So for example, on that, like coach, if somebody's top end speed needs work, or their starts need work, which one's going to help better for your listeners? Let's say a reverse hyper with their straight leg, doing a reverse hyper helps with the start because it's more of a glute driven pattern in the post, where the glute ham is more of a top end speed beneficiary. Uh-huh. So you can trade out your exercises. This kid needs better top end speed efficient. So the glute ham is a much better thing than the reverse hyper. Now, like with RPR, one of the things I've seen, and coach, when I would throw exercises in there, I also watch exercises to see what's going on. Like, so in the reverse hyper years ago, I caught, hey, why does these few guys, when they're doing reverse hyper, they bend their knee when they start the movement? Well, when you check their glute extension pattern, their hamstring fires before their glute. And they would bend their knee in the reverse hyper. So you just sometimes when you start a new exercise, you just got to watch. Right? I coach it to safety, but after that, like what's firing first? What's going on? And I think these young coaches don't always worry about making something absolutely perfect. Understand who you're dealing with and what's going on. And maybe there can be something to teach you, and not even just to fix this problem, but maybe a coaching point or something, right? So you don't have to make everything perfect right away. They're gonna get better.
No, but as long as and I love that. I love everything you just said, because really, if you have awareness and you are an observer, you are going to realize that every single thing that you do with an athlete or client, every exercise is going to give a result. And as long as you can continue to observe after the execution of that exercise, maybe they're walking around, maybe they're running around, maybe they're just moving, you are most likely going to be a lot more in tune and see something change, like how they move. And that's a lot of what we do. It's like, okay, you're going to do this exercise, now go take a walk. And we actually watch them walk. We're like, oh, okay, that's much cleaner. the pattern is not disrupted. But then you give them something else, and the next thing you're like, whoa, boy,
right.
That really sent them somewhere I was not expecting and where I don't want them to go. So that movement, that's out of here for the time being until we can figure out what's going on with that. But for right now, in the midst of it, I'm not going to have you do this one. I'm going to go with the big buckets that I know that gave you the best results. And so you're going to go this, and this. So
right. Well, that's the thing. Like, Coach, I have tested more things than I think I have more tests than any other coach I've ever met, maybe in the world. I would say I got to be up there. When I say that, like, we'll run a 40 and I got timing gates at every 5 yards. Right. So I have a different test, and then I analyze the last 5 to the first 5, blah, 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 blah. I have two 1080s over there. The 1080 Sprint is the device that's probably one of the smoothest in the world, where you sprint and literally, Coach, you see the foot hit, you see in it, you can put 1 pound of resistance, and it's basically a force plate that's hooked you. And then I can, and then when my athletes run, they'll run with those things. So if I'm doing assisted runs, I can say, hey, your top speed's at let's say 8 meters per second. I can pull you at 8.1. That thing will pull you at 8.1. Wow. So then I know, like, a lot of these world-class speed coaches, and they go, well, I'm not big in assistant, and that's fine. I don't know either way on a world-class sprinter, but I know, here's what I've seen with my athletes, which are repeated sprint ability. So it would be tracker, soccer, or basketball, hockey, football, anything that repeats sprints, right? I know that assisted running works for them. I use it with the 1080 because it's very, like, particular. If I want to pull them at 4 kilos, and it adjusts 500 times per second. So when you're running with this, you don't know that you can feel faster, but you don't know you're being pulled because it's so smooth and adjusting at 500 times per second or 3, whatever it is. But the point is, Coach, the one thing with overspeed training that I've seen is it turns reflexes on, because it also opens up the brain and goes, holy crap, something's going on here. And I've seen the athleticism, and I took some courses on checking reflexes that were shut off on kids, whether it be the stumble and when you do this, bam, it lights them up and turns them on.
It all comes back to the brain.
Oh yeah. That's my point to you, is you knew this, but I think that's what I want the listeners to truly understand. It's the brain and the system. And so then, and if you just start digging in the brain now, I mean, we still won't have a grasp of 4% maybe if you and I dug into the brain seriously together for the next 20 years.
No,
right?
It's just beginning. That's the exciting part. I can't believe it.
Right.
Cal, this has been phenomenal, and unfortunately, I mean, this time has flown by for me. I could have this conversation for another hour.
For
at
sure.
Least. But
next time we'll do one, and we'll have a drink. I don't know if you have a cocktail, but we can have a beer while we do this. So.
You got it. That's good. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate this, and so for the listening audience, they want to find out more about RPR or anything that you're doing. What's the best way to do that?
Like the website for RPR is Reflexive Performance. And then triphasictraining.com has some information. My one big website is XL Athlete, just like extra large athlete. I've been posting stuff on there for 15 years now, and you can see there. And then I Cal Dietz on Instagram or whatever. And then my YouTube page, I think many coaches have said I give away more stuff than anybody else. But I mean, I don't know, Rocky, I get all excited. Well, I get all excited and I want to share it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, whatever.
I do.
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's exciting stuff. And, but, ultimately, my books are Triphasic Training. I have a number of them. A lot of them will probably get on Amazon next 6 months, but I've done like digital copies on various platforms. But yeah, so people want to get that. But, ultimately, and my email is like caldietz@gmail. And if I don't get to you, hit me back up. I like questions because it kind of inspires. And a lot of times I can just send a link of something I wrote or a video on YouTube, right? And if it's a good question, sometimes I'll do a video that where I think people need to know. They're usually all good questions, but so just having fun and enjoying what I do. And then if you send an email, maybe put free whiskey or free beer on it. Usually gets my attention pretty quick. Okay.
Oh, Cal, thanks so much.
Well, thank you for your time too. I appreciate it.
And that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed the archives. I gotta say, every time I listen to Cal talk, I get something new. Even if it's the same conversation recorded, I guess I gotta write notes better. But I can't thank him enough. I'm gonna reach out to him and congratulate him on the gold medals hanging from his athletes' necks. And man, what a great time. I hope to have him back on the show sooner rather than later. And until next week, just go out there and make it a good one. There's one more listen to our sponsors. Remember to check out metabolicelite.co. Check out all the products they have on their website. Synapsin Pro is something I've been using to help stay focused without having to over-caffeinate myself. It keeps me in the zone so I can just really hone in on the things I need to achieve without feeling like, man, I gotta reach for an energy drink every 5 minutes. metabolicelite.co. And don't forget, Kinetic IQ. They've got markerless motion capture for morons like me. I can use their product with my iPhone or my iPad. I can look at posture analysis, movement analysis of any exercise, gait analysis. It gives me everything I could possibly want when tracking people's movements. So, check out kinetikiq.com.